How's your week going? I'm not sure how it is where you are, but last week was really hot. I had washing on the line, I had sun cream on, and today it is honestly like winter again. What a change. I hope you all had an amazing week, and I'm still really new to this, so please bear with me while I get some skills, any skills. This is an April reading wrap up. February and March were really terrible reading months for me, and I'm not sure why, but they were not good. April, however, definite improvement. I ended up reading 10 books in April, and I just thought I'd share with you what I read. You will come to learn about me is I am really bad at rating books. Like really bad to rating. I also tend not to talk so much about books that I really didn't enjoy or just didn't hit the mark. So I read 10 books in April. 90% of them were fiction, 10% were non-fiction. I'm not a heavy non-fiction reader, but I read a really great non-fiction book in April, which I'll talk about later. I've actually forgotten where I've put that non-fiction book, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about it. I use Storygraph to track all of my reading, and I love their statistics of the way that they display that data. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about statistic-wise comes straight from Storygraph. So one of the things I like in Storygraph is that it tracks the moods of the books that I'm reading. And April was a month of dark, mysterious and emotional. To be fair, most of my reading months are dark, mysterious and emotional. In most of the books that I read in April were between 300 and 499 pages. If you followed me on Bookstagram or BookTok, then I do enjoy a chunky book. But maybe this is what I needed, was just a month of a shorter read to get me back into the swing of things. My top genres were fantasy, it's normally fantasy, romance, and coming in a four-way tie, LGBTQIA+, YA, contemporary, which does not come up that often, and thriller, which again is on the rarer side. First book in April was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. You may be more familiar with Ali Hazelwood for their STEM romance. This is the first foray into paranormal, supernatural romance. I really enjoyed it. I have seen this described as Omegaverse. And while I don't necessarily agree with it being Omegaverse, I can see why it's been given that description. Certainly it is a way to dip your toe into some of the aspects of Omegaverse. In essence, like I said, this is a supernatural romance. We have Misery, who is from a prolific vampire family, and we have Lo, who is essentially the head of a werewolf pack. Yeah, so this is vampires and werewolves in a kind of Romeo and Juliet style retelling. There is found family, marriage of convenience. This has got those my wife moments, touch her and you'll die. Was it the best book that I've ever read? Absolutely not. Did I enjoy it? Yeah, I did. It was easy to read. I enjoyed Lo and Misery, and there is another character who I really enjoyed in this book. It was a fun read. I have seen really mixed reviews on this one, but you got to go with what you think, and for me, I enjoyed it. Next book that I read was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is dark academia set in Yale. This was darker than I was expecting. This is the first adult book that I've read by Leigh Bardugo. I have read Shadow and Bone, which honestly not my favourite. I've read Six of Crows duology, which I really enjoyed. All of the action takes place within the hallowed halls of Yale University, and while I was reading this I could not help but think, is this also a bit of a dig at the establishment? Our main protagonist is Alex Stern, and Alex is not somebody that you necessarily would think you're going to find at Yale. I'm not sure that Alex thought they were going to find themselves at Yale. Alex, to say has lived through trauma would be an absolute understatement. Through a number of unexpected happenings, Alex has found themselves at Yale University, in charge of monitoring the activities of Yale's secret societies. That sounds like the best job ever. It's not. All of Alex's work is being funded by mysterious benefactors. And you do have to question why. In these secret societies, you have your usual levels of wrongdoing, darkness and debauchery. But then there is some really bad stuff going down. And Alex finds themselves in the thick of it. I really enjoyed this book. I would say if you're going to read this book, definitely check out the content warnings and the trigger warnings. There are some things that happened in this book that took me totally by surprise. I was not expecting them. So please, if you have triggers, look at the content warnings on this one. Slow start to it. There is an enormous and dense amount of world building, and even Leigh Bardugo comments that this has got a challenging start. So if you get through this book, you have done really, really well. I really enjoyed it. The ending, the twists and the turns, the intricacies. I loved learning about the secret societies. And I can't wait to get stuck into Hellbent, which is book 2. I went to hear Leigh Bardugo talk, and pretty sure that book 3 of this series is coming in 2025. So you have got plenty of time to read Ninth House and Hellbent. Also, I'm terrified of snakes, so everything inside me is going wild right now. Stolen Air by Holly Black. I love The Cruel Prince and the Folk of the Air trilogy. I love it. It is, I'm not going to be held to anything, but I would say it is one of my all-time favourite series. It just grows and grows, and as you get deeper into that series, you're like, yes. I love the characters. They will always stay with me. They're some of my favourite characters ever. I was really excited when I saw that Holly Black was revisiting that world and we were getting Oak's story. Then I put it on my shelf and did not think about it. Randomly picked it up in April. I think it's probably back in my brain because book 2 came out, which is The Prisoner's Throne. I wanted to love this book so much. I really did. It is not a bad book. It is perfectly readable. I did feel at times it was copied and pasted from the other series. I mean, there's going to be similarities because it's within the same world. but at times it felt like it wasn't just the same world, it was the same thing happening to different people. So, like I said, it wasn't a bad book, it just didn't... I just didn't love it as much as The Cruel Prince. Will I read the next book in the series? Absolutely, yes. When? I don't know. Evocation by S.T. Gibson. This is out on the 28th of May. I was really lucky to be sent a copy from Angry Robot Books. Thank you so much. And I did this as a buddy read with Ram and Renette over on Storygraph. If you are ever doing buddy reads, Storygraph is such a good platform for that. We follow three main characters. We have Reese and Moira, who are a married couple, and David, who has a past with Reese. All three have magical or seeing abilities. Quite early on, we find out that David has something going on with them and has been a victim of a spiritual or psychic attack. I'm not going to go into any more details because you need to read the book. David finds himself having to reach out and ask for help from the last people that he really wants to ask, which is his ex-boyfriend Reese and Reese's wife Moira. Moira in this book was by far my favourite character. She was an absolute vibe. I really enjoyed this book. S.T. Gibson is an auto-buy author for me. I really loved Dowry of Blood and I loved An Education in Malice. This is not either of those books. This is a really different read, and I love the fact that it reaches a new audience again who maybe don't want that kind of gothic side to it. I think S.T. Gibson is a really talented writer. This is definitely character focused and the plot here is just in place to move the characters along. It's just to give you more character development. So if you don't get on with a book that is very light on plot and character driven, you are probably not going to enjoy this book. I loved it. And this is the first in a series. Need to look at the Fairy Loot edition of this book because chef's kiss. I did a reread of One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. Olivia Blake is absolutely an auto-buy author for me. This was in my top 10 of 2023. It is a Romeo and Juliet, and that's two Romeo and Juliet inspired books in this April roundup. It is a Romeo and Juliet fairy tale-esque retelling based in the boroughs of New York, and we have two rival crime families. We have the Antonovas and we have the Fedorovs. The Antonova sisters are beautiful, charming and deadly, and the Fedorov brothers are another gang. Olivia Blake knows how to eviscerate your heart. This is beautiful, but you will need tissues. Paperback has just come out and there is some additional material in the paperback in the way of a short story called Love Language, and that is a Lev and Sasha book. I really love in this how there is no sense of time. It is like old and new. It's so fairy tale-esque. And one thing I didn't tell you is that both of the rival gangs are witches. Olivia Blake manages to create even more magic by sprinkling in Eastern European folklore with Baba Yaga and Koschei as the heads of the family. This book is deeply romantic, drama-packed and heartbreaking. This is a 5-star for me. The reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. I really enjoyed The Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and I really enjoyed that entire series. I did not enjoy 5 Survive. I'm on the fence with this one. It read really easily. I did not guess all the twists and turns. I did have a gut feeling about a certain character, and I couldn't realise why. There was something picking away at my brain in the first half of this book, and then it all made sense. Obviously I can't tell you because spoilers. For me, there was too much that happened at the end of this book that made it less believable. Would I recommend it? Yeah, it's a good read if you like thrillers, especially YA thrillers. It's around 400 pages, but I finished it in a day and a half. The main character is Belle, who is dealing with the reappearance of Rachel Price, her mother. Belle has agreed to be part of a documentary along with the rest of her family about the disappearance of Rachel Price, and during that filming, this isn't a spoiler, Rachel reappears. Where has Rachel been for the last 16 years? And who is responsible for her disappearance? Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. This is book 2 in the Farseer trilogy. This was an absolute 5-star smash for me. It is a chunky book and they do get bigger. Like I said, this is book 2. The first book is Assassin's Apprentice, and we follow Fitz, who is the illegitimate son of a member of the Farseer family. If you are looking for fast-paced fantasy adventure, then this series is probably not going to be for you. If you are looking for some of the best storytelling that I have ever experienced, then Robin Hobb is your human. This is kingdom politics. It is weaving a web of a story that you never know what tiny detail is going to come into play at a later date. I have fallen in love with this world. Is Fitz possibly one of the most naive humans ever? Absolutely. Is he helped along by some amazing people? Absolutely. Burrich for me is the GOAT. I love Burrich. I almost picked up book 3 this month, but I don't want it to end, and I have set myself a little challenge that I want to read all of the Robin Hobb books in 2024. I think that may be a push, but you gotta have a dream. I read some non-fiction. I don't read that much non-fiction anymore, but I do love non-fiction. And I really do love true crime. The book was Great and Horrible News: Murder and Mayhem in Early Modern Britain. Books by Blessing Adams, and I've read a lot of historical true crime, and what was really special about this was I had never read about any of these cases before. I also enjoyed the fact that this wasn't just a straight up this is what the consequences were. It also looked at it from kind of a social context and how that emerging reporting about crime and the way that different people within society exploited those crimes, almost celebrating it in kind of like a carnival type way, especially around the punishments, served as a way of keeping the rest of the population in line. It was a really, really good book. It was quite a quick read, and I don't actually know where I've put it, but I will put a picture up here of what it looks like. I did an audiobook. It was Enter Ghost. It's by Isabella Hamad, and this has been shortlisted for the Women's Fiction Prize. It follows a Palestinian actor. I can totally see why this book has been shortlisted for the Women's Fiction Prize. It was excellent. It's not something that I would normally pick up, but I was intrigued because throughout this we see a lot of the story is explored through the rehearsals, the practice around putting on Hamlet in Arabic. Hamlet is actually one of my favourite Shakespearean plays, and I thought that the portrayal within this story was so clever. We also have the portrayal of Palestinian life in occupied and unoccupied areas. Our main character feels really disconnected from their history and their heritage. I loved experiencing their thoughts and feelings. This book is really heavy, and I am glad that I did the audio of the book, because sometimes when books are incredibly dense, and this is dense, it's not a particularly long book, but there is a lot to take in and there is a lot on the pages. So I really found that the audio helped me in that sense. It was narrated really, really well, and honestly I would be so chuffed if this won the Women's Prize. I do apologise if you can hear a grunting snoring through the entirety of this video, because Albus has just decided to emerge from his little cocoon and just grunt around the place. He's not in a great mood. My last book of the month was You Again by Kate Goldbeck. This is a romantic comedy based in New York. I've done quite a lot of New York this month as well. I was intrigued by this one because I had seen glowing reviews about it, and something that piqued my interest was that it is a Ray Lowe fanfic that has been reimagined. I really love fanfic, so I was excited to read this one. And I really enjoyed it. I was in from the start. The characters, yeah, they probably are quite stereotypical, but I enjoyed them. They were fun, it was funny, I enjoyed the banter. We have Ari, who is a struggling comedian, and we have Josh, who is a chef. They come together quite funnily. Their first meeting is when Josh turns up to Ari's flat to meet with Natalie, and they find out they are both sleeping with the same person. So it is enemies to lovers. Well, it's enemies to friends and friends to potentially lovers. You'll have to read it. It's really charming. It was just a really easy read. It made me laugh out loud, and not a lot of books make me laugh. I don't get humour often, so for something to make me barely laugh, it's got to be good. I also really love that at one point Josh is referred to as the darkling of the New York restaurant scene, which I thought was really good. Yep, I gave this one 4 stars. It was actually one of the ones I rated. Gave this one 4 stars. And that was my April readings. Probably my standout books were Evocation and Royal Assassin. I can't wait for book 3. So let me know what you've been reading, and if you do like this video, like, comment and subscribe. Still feels stupid. Take care of yourselves. Bye.